Hello again, welcome back to another video. In this one I wanted to talk about my Alocasia Frydek here, or Micholitziana I think it's pronounced. It's a beautiful Alocasia. I love the beautiful white veining on the leaves and the sort of velvety texture. I really love this plant, but it is quite a picky plant to look after, and so I thought I'd do a bit of a care guide, or certainly go over the care notes for it, because if you've bought one of these and you've just looked it up on the interwebs, there are things you should know. It is one of these plants that just likes to sulk. They've got such big leaves, or these leaves can grow very big compared to the stem on them, and they have a habit of really pulling themselves down. You can see some of these leaves over here that just like to sort of like bow their head like that. I quite like that actually. I think it's a nice look. It kind of presents the face of the leaf to you, and you get to see more of these beautiful veinings as a result of it. But if you're not careful, all of it can start pulling themselves down like that. So you do have to be a little bit careful with the watering and where you situate it as well. So in this video, if you hang around to the end, I'm going to talk to you about what you can do to keep it looking its best all the time, what not to do, and also something you really should know, because you could risk losing your plant over this one. So stay tuned. So as you can see, I'm not in the potting shed today. Firstly, it's because this is where I actually keep my Alocasia Frydek, and I thought it might be nice to occasionally see where these plants are kept. This is one of my bedrooms that I've converted into a cinema room here in my home in the UK. Anyway, back to the Alocasia. As we can see here, it's pretty happy, it's pretty healthy. We don't have any browning of the leaves. Most of them are pointed upwards and not bowing down. The smaller ones tend to bow down at the bottom here. That's kind of normal for them, I think, as far as I can tell. Anyway, but it seems fairly happy. And the key to keeping these plants happy is watering. They do need plenty of water to keep the stems turgid, to keep the strength in the stems, because as soon as they lose that water in the stems, that's when the weight of the leaves start pulling them down, and it gets that big wilting look, and sometimes it's difficult to get them to pump up again as well. So watering is key. The soil needs to stay moist but doesn't want to be wet all the time, so you don't want to allow it to dry out completely, but at the same time you don't want to keep it really wet. So it's one of these ones that you probably do need to give it more attention than others. I think it will appreciate non-hard water as well. It's one of those plants that would benefit from rainwater. If you can collect rainwater for yourself, that's the best type of water that you can give it. A little bit of humidity won't hurt. I've got my humidifier on in the background at the moment, mainly to help my monstera, because some of the whites of the leaves are crisping up and browning off, but it's also benefiting from that, and also not drying out completely. It's in a fairly bright location here. This is one of the brighter rooms I have in my house, with a south-facing location, but it is right at the other end. We're right against the wall here, so it is at the other end of the room compared to the window. It's only, I mean, it's the width ways we're talking here, so it's probably only about, I don't know, 3 or 4 meters away from the window. It's certainly not shaded by any stretch, as you can see. But having said that, the highlight plants like the monstera and like this Alocasia really do want more light than not. These guys would be quite happy right up against a window. Obviously, without getting burnt by the direct sun, you could probably get some leaf scorch if you did, but getting right up against a very bright window, this would be very happy. But because of that, I have got some additional lighting over here again for the monstera, but it's also in the range of this one, so it's getting additional light as well as the light coming in from the window, which I think is probably about right for this one. It seems fairly happy with that. And of course, rotation is important with this type of plant, because they will pull round to the light source, and so if you keep it in one place for too long, it's all going to just look over in one area, and I don't think that looks very good. So if you can remember to rotate your plant on a regular basis, weekly, something like that is really good. Just turn it a quarter of a turn every week, something like that, or half a turn, depending. If you've noticed it's really pulled round one side, turn it round the opposite way just to bring the balance back over. But that's something to think about. Now, if you've got one of these plants and one of the leaves is pulling itself down and starting to look very unhappy, if it's just one of the leaves and it's maybe one of the bigger ones, don't worry too much about it, because this type of plant has the way the leaves are renewed is the oldest leaf will die off and it's replaced by a newer leaf. That's how the cycle with these type of plants. So if you have one leaf that's not looking good and starting to fall over, don't be too concerned about that. It might be just the older one, and that means there's a new leaf coming, or maybe a new leaf has already come out. And that's the other reason not to worry too much about some of these leaves as they come down, because as new leaves are created, and if your plant is healthy, it should be bringing out new leaves fairly regularly. When they come out, there's going to be more energy demands on the plant. It's going to need more water. So if you see a new leaf coming out, I've had a few new ones come out recently, absolutely cute little leaves that actually are a perfect replica of the bigger ones. And when these come out, you have to be a bit careful, because again, there's more tax on the plant. You have to maybe up the water a little bit more, give it a little bit more water than you would do normally, just to help it along a bit. So just bear that in mind. If you've got new leaves, pay attention to your plant, give it a look over every now and again. If you can see some new leaves coming out, you might need it to give it some extra water. In the growing season, when there's actively new leaves coming out, it's going to need a helping hand with some feed as well. A liquid feed once a month is going to really help it keep the energy in the soil. So if you mix up a batch like Liquid Gold Leaf, I use all the time. I really like that plant fertilizer. I'll put a link in the description for you. I'm not being sponsored, it's just what I use. Give it a water on the base in the soil, and if you've got a tray like this one is sat on, put some water in the bottom so it can absorb the water from the base and the top. This one is quite full of soil at the moment, so it is actually easier to water from underneath than it is from the top. But I always put I've got a fine rose on my small houseplant watering can, and I'll water the surface as much as possible just to get some moisture in the top a little bit, in the top sort of ½ inch, and I'll put the rest of it at the bottom so it soaks up from there. And I think that's better for the roots as well, because it means the roots are searching down for the water rather than sort of going all over the place, and potentially if the water sits in the bottom of the pot, it tends to start doing that spirally thing as well, which is not ideal. So just something to think about when you're watering the plant. Like I said at the beginning, this isn't the easiest plant to look after. So if you're the type of houseplant keeper where you like to just put some water in every now and again and not think about them, this one is going to be a struggle. So just be aware, if you've bought this one, it is going to need a bit of your time. Now, I did mention at the beginning, there's one thing you really have to know about these plants, because you could risk killing your plant accidentally, and that is winter dormancy. If you live in a country like me, where it gets colder over the winter, the light levels drop, the nights come closing in, and the plants react to that. And this plant can and does go into winter dormancy, which means the leaves are going to start to drop and die off. And you could mistake this for it just giving up and dying. And most people would just throw this plant in the bin and say, oh, well, I've killed it. Another one bites the dust, you know. But if it coincides with autumn and winter, and the light levels have been dropping and it's been getting a little bit cooler, then just bear that in mind, that we could be seeing some winter dormancy from this plant. So cut off the old and dead leaves and keep it, but don't throw it away. Keep it somewhere where it's still got some light and an average temperature. It's not going to need a lot of water at this stage because there's no growth to make use of that water. So don't keep watering at the same level. So you want to have the soil very, very slightly moist, not dry, but not wet either. Just a little bit moist, and make sure it doesn't dry out completely, but don't keep regularly watering it because it won't use that water. And then in the spring, fingers crossed, you'll see some new growth coming out of the corms of the bulbs, and you're off to the races again with new leaves, and you can enjoy the plant for another year. Alright, I think that pretty much covers the main care tips for this plant. Let me know down in the comments if you have any other questions or I've missed something, or if you keep these plants yourself and you've got some care tips for me. Do let me know down in the comments. It's great to get a conversation going about the care of these plants because there's always something new to learn. Please give it a thumbs up if you found this video useful. It does make a massive difference to the channel, and subscribe for more houseplant related videos coming along very soon. Bye for now.